Welcome, everyone. If you're listening on Spotify or YouTube, we want to welcome you back to our second official episode of Town Talk. If you haven't heard, we debuted our very own podcast this month. And so we're excited to be continuing that on with these same folks I've got in the room. Who are you?
Well, we're back. We're back again. Another episode. I'm AJ.
I'm Ashley.
Ashley. We already know each other. Sam.
Yes, Sam, communications specialist. Glad to be here.
Once again, appears in commercials, but we got her. She made some time for us.
Local celeb.
Yeah. So everything's good. I'm happy to be here. I'm ready to get into some good stuff.
Okay, there it is.
She just touched the buttons that are on my side of the table.
The superior button.
Was that you?
That was me. I wanted to get some hype.
I like it. You know, it's a good episode when you hear the bear, bear, bear. Okay, we're going to try and chill on that. But hey, before we go any further, for those who are not in the room and who don't know, we kind of have the big man who needs no introduction sitting with us here. He's our guest, but we're going to introduce him anyway. His name is your city manager of Victoria, Jesús Garza.
Hey there.
Hi.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the show.
I've been wanting to come for my entire life. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that I finally
That's how
made it
long
out
we've been running the podcast. So
Yeah.
that's ironic.
That's what I
That's
hear.
how long podcasts have existed.
Exactly.
That's
right.
Well, we're honored to have you on.
Very.
If that's a check mark on your list of life goals, I'm happy.
I already added it to my resume.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
I think you could get a lot of things with that on there.
I'm not applying for jobs, by the way.
Good. Stay here.
Just updating it just for podcast purposes.
Well, we always kick it off with a casual question of the day. But first, you got a fancy little cup right here. Did you make that yourself?
Yes.
What does it say?
It says I don't drink cafe.
Oh, is that true?
It is 100% true. I
Oh,
do not drink
wow.
coffee.
I do. Cheers.
Yeah. Salud.
Salud.
And it's water, by the way, just to be clear.
Arts and crafts
Salud.
starts it off.
Yeah.
I love
Okay.
it.
Well, so how was everyone's day? That's usually the question we like to kind of kick it off with.
It's good so far. Obviously for me, it's here setting up everything. So
You didn't just come and sit down and
right,
have a ball?
I'm part of the setup crew. So thank y'all guys, the setup crew in the background. Y'all killed it this time. Y'all did great. I don't have to be the only one sweating in here. So
Okay.
that's been my day. I haven't seen the sun yet. I think it's doing great outside, I would imagine.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's pretty nice out there. So this morning I was working on getting the news releases together for the newsletter. And one that I'm weirdly excited about, which it will have come out already by the time this airs, is that Environmental Services just got 2 new trash trucks. They had been having some breakdowns, so hopefully this will help with that. But unfortunately, I was not able to get a photo of the new trash trucks, so we just put a photo of some similar looking trucks. And just to let people use their imaginations.
Love it.
I have a feeling that's going to be a hilarious press release.
Yeah.
I have a feeling these trucks you ended up putting up out there look nothing like the real truck.
I mean, they're City of Victoria trucks.
Because knowing your sense of humor, it's gonna be.
I heard the subtlety
it's gonna
right there.
Be,
That's what I thought too. I
It's
thought
the
you were
truck from-
F-150 or something.
It's the truck from Pokemon Red and Blue. And it's a
Okay.
similar looking truck.
Though these trucks are not intended for finding Pokemon, you can use your imagination. Okay. So how was your
There
day?
you go. It's been great now that I'm here. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay.
Can we first establish that you are in jeans, correct?
Yes. So I was told to dress casual because it's a big deal to be on this podcast, and I wore jeans. So I just want the record to show that I wore jeans.
Let the
even though-
record show
Yeah,
city
even
managers in
though-
jeans.
even though you can't really see it.
Awesome.
That's perfect.
Well, we really are glad to have you here. We've got a lot to talk to you about. Limited time, of course, because we've got some viewers that are going to be tuning in and wanting to hear this and wanting to hear from the man himself. So,
Please stop calling me the man.
the man. What else do I say? El Señor,
Jesus.
Jesus, my friend.
See.
El Jefe. Okay, I'm gonna stop. Okay, so the first thing that we really wanted to kind of ask you, just to kind of get the convo flowing, is oftentimes, us in the room, we know how much you know about the city and local government. As a city manager, you know that the answer to any why question, like why this, why that, why spend money on this, why that street over this street, those sort of questions that you constantly get. But knowing what you know, you probably hear a lot of people in the community, maybe even city staff, I hope not, ask you a bunch of questions and they don't know the answer. So what, if any, topic or area of local government would you wish, if you had like a little sticky note and you could permanently put it on someone's shoulder or something on their shirt, what would you want that message to be?
So that they would always remember it.
Yeah. It's a loaded question.
Well, what's hilarious is that I was actually in a meeting with some staff earlier, and Roger, everybody knows Roger.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Roger Welder.
Yeah, he's a trip.
Mm-hmm.
And he recommended that I get a shirt that says, "Money doesn't grow on trees."
Yep. That's a good one.
Yep.
And not all money's created equal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that in itself, I think is probably, if I had to pick, it's just this reality that us here at the city and in local government, we run and function completely different than the federal government.
Right.
And so we do have limited resources. We can't print money, things of that sort. And so I think generally people, believe that we do function more like the federal government and can run on debt and can run on printing money and things of that sort. And that's just not our reality.
Right.
And so oftentimes that's probably the more common subject, that the common denominator subject is around money. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that later, but
Right.
Definitely money doesn't grow on trees.
And I definitely know you for the money, not all money is equal.
100%.
Because that's something that I've heard you say plenty of
It's a
times.
common theme in many of your presentations.
Which we'll get into. In
We
just a little
will,
bit.
yeah.
Cool.
See.
Well, I know before we get
I
into
actually
that.
prepared.
Oh, good.
I like that.
We told him if you're listening, we were going to talk about the budget. So I imagine he thought a lot, long and hard about the budget.
I didn't sleep all night. Actually.
Really?
I'm just kidding.
Do you personally remember all of these numbers? Could you
Geez, if
Wow.
you don't know, we have a balanced budget. We did create a budget flyer for educational purposes. And so we have a $194 million budget that was passed for fiscal year 2025. Exciting times.
But yes, I definitely focus on the bigger funds, especially the ones that we have employees that are a part of, right? General fund or enterprise fund, utility fund. CIP is a big one, right? $40.5 million going into fiscal year 25. So yeah, you gotta know, man. You gotta know it.
That's what we're showing right now, kind of
So,
up on the screen. Is
You want to quiz me? Quiz me.
I'm good. I don't want to quiz.
Not a quiz.
But you did talk about these topics a lot in a column that you did recently, where you really let people know, like, it's a balancing act, quite literally, because you have to have a balanced budget. And so I know during this budget year, there were a lot of really difficult and necessary conversations that took place. And one of those was about employee compensation. So can you talk a little bit about kind of what the city has been doing to make sure that, that people are compensated fairly and within market rates?
Sure. Well, I mean, it goes without saying that the people that come every day to work for the city are literally the people that are making Victoria a better place to live, right? And a better place to visit. And I've mentioned it before and I'll say it again. Our employees are our greatest asset. We literally spend the majority of our money on our greatest asset, which is our people. And the unfortunate reality is that it's difficult for us to keep up with market salary, market compensation compared to other communities that are outpacing our growth, that are outpacing our revenues. And because of what I mentioned earlier, that money doesn't grow on trees, right? It makes it very difficult to keep up. And so we've tried over the last 5 years to be more intentional with it, right? And so since 2020, for example, as I mentioned in the column, we've pumped over $5 million in employee compensation in a 4-year period. We just updated that study and now are tackling it with a new phase going into fiscal year 25 to try and do what we can, basically, right? I mean, we know that we're pretty far away from certain markets, right? I think most people could probably agree that, a market like Houston, San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, some of the larger markets, they just have more money and can pay folks more money, right? So we know that's a challenge for us, but we also know that we're very unique and that we have a very family-centric, culture and environment. I mean, I've worked in large entities and they can be much harder in a larger organization to achieve that family environment, right? Working for the city of San Antonio, over 12,000 employees. I mean, imagine you know, how difficult it is to feel part of a family when there's over 12,000 employees, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so with us, you know, at just roughly 640 employees, you know, we do what we can, you know.
One of which is raising the minimum wage to $13 an hour.
To
I know
15.
that to 15. I'm sorry. And so that's a significant step. You know, it hadn't been done in years. And so there are strides being made by your office and council together to improve, you know, compensation program. And so I'm glad to see that that was passed, and we'll be able to see the fruits of that later on.
Hopefully.
Doing what you can.
Yeah, doing what we can, right? And like I said, you know, money doesn't grow on trees, and it's important that we also run a very efficient, you know, organization. One of the things that I think people oftentimes assume is that, you know, local governments run, you know, as inefficient as maybe the federal government does, or some along those lines. But it's also a completely different beast. You know, I mean,
Right.
we run a very tight, lean, you know, machine, if you will, right? And so, you know, there isn't this excess cash that's just being wasted. And obviously our investment in technology to run things more smoothly, efficiently, et cetera, helps us be able to maximize the resources that go towards our people, right? And that's what we've tried to do over the last 5 years.
Yeah, I've seen some of it in workshops with finance, going through all the different moves that can be made to make sure that certain projects get taken care of. And I'm just amazed because y'all are constantly thinking creative ways to, once again, to your point, we're not, you know, to stay out of debt. You know, we can't print money. So
Right.
one of those things.
Right.
And it
It'd be nice though.
It,
I mean, if we could print money, you know,
What would you buy if you could? If you had all the money in the world, what would you buy?
personally or in my professional
That's what I was about to
career?
ask.
Personally.
Personally, I
Yeah.
wouldn't be here right now if I could print money on the personal
Hold on.
side. I'm sorry. I love
I don't
you.
think we
I love
would
you
either.
all,
We might
but-
be on vacation
or
somewhere.
we would be
we
doing
had
this
all the money in the
podcast.
world,
I think
Yeah.
the question would be, well, how would I keep myself busy? I feel like, because I feel
Yeah.
like I'd lose my mind with not having to work on something. And that's probably for you too, because
Yeah.
you're a very busy person. I feel like you not working
Yes.
on something would be hard for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
You could have all the money,
Right.
but then you would be looking for something to
Right.
do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well,
can see that.
you know, and one thing that I thought you were going to bring up was just talking about the profession and what I do, because oftentimes people don't know,
Yeah.
you know, what is
Sure.
the role of a city manager. And
Tell
so
us.
if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I think it's important for people to get a feel for what it is that I do. And because the title is deceiving, right? You know, you don't learn what the title city manager means in school. You don't see it in a movie, on a TV show, unless you watch Parks and Rec. But
Totally.
yeah, but in any case, you know, as a city manager, I basically serve as the chief administrative officer of the organization, right? And so I'm hired and held accountable by the elected officials who serve as the board of directors of this organization. And I'm basically responsible for the day-to-day running of the organization, right? And like I tell employees during new employee orientation every month, I don't do it alone. It'd be too difficult for one person to do it. And that's why we have an executive leadership team, an executive team made up of the chiefs, the directors, et cetera. But ultimately and collectively, you know, the buck stops with me, right? In terms of accountability, in terms of running the organization efficiently, financially speaking. You know, you asked a question about the budget. Literally by our city charter and by law, one of my biggest responsibilities is to propose the budget. And so as city manager, you know, the budget is my baby, you know, and so I should know, you know, what's in it and what's it about, you know, every year when we put it together and present it. But anyway, yeah, it's basically just responsible for the day to day, you know, while trying to also influence and contribute, you know, my expertise and my experiences in the policymaking process,
Right.
Because obviously, you know, you don't often have elected officials that, you know, studied local government or
Right.
that have experience directly doing economic development or things of that sort. And so that's where bringing, you know, experienced city managers to the table can really help. And I think it's made a big difference in the last 5 years. If you just look at what we've been able to accomplish with economic development, quality of life enhancements, you know, things of that sort.
Right.
100%, I think that's tied to the experiences that I think the team has brought, you know, in the last few years.
Agreed. And couldn't agree more. the culture that you've brought to this organization and to council. You know, kudos to council too, because they themselves bring in the policy making, as Jesus alluded to just a second ago. Just that collaborative effort. And then even with subject matter experts, with department heads coming in and just having those necessary conversations about certain projects that are up on the chopping block, if you will, you know, of council action items, those sort of things. That infusion that you've brought has just been really exciting to see. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. People always say it's growth in Victoria. Well, I like to say it's completion of projects. I'm not sure what Jesus is going to say about that, but we'll see.
I'm not either.
One of the questions I wanted to wrap up the topic of budget with, if you don't mind, so we can move on, because we've got some other good stuff to talk with you about, is on the screen. If you're watching on Spotify, if you're just listening, we've got the proposed property tax rate pulled up. And we're not going to talk about it for forever. But one of the questions we asked you a second ago was, what was one of those areas you wish you could put on a sticky note and, like, I'm going to say, put it on someone's head so they never forget it? I think it would be one of these as well. You know, every time we say that we are decreasing the property tax rate, for one, this year it's 4% less than the year prior, I believe. If that's the case, you know, and sometimes budget documents, it says it's increasing, but we know inside that it's just legal language that requires us to say it as such, and it doesn't take into account the M&O versus the INS side. And so,
and everybody listening knows exactly what you're talking about.
Maintenance and operation. There is a part of our budget that is focused solely on our maintenance and operation of our organization, and then the INS.
Yeah, it's
the interest in sinking.
And not everybody knows what these
debt rate.
Yeah, not everybody knows what those terms are necessarily. But let's say that I'm a person who I'm at a council meeting. I pick up the agenda. I read the memo, and it says the tax rate is increasing. And I go up to you, Jesus, and I say, "Hey, Mr. City Manager, it says here that the tax rate is increasing, but I thought it was decreasing. What does that mean? Why? Can you explain that to me?"
I can.
in a deep way, right?
In a deep way, yeah. Let me stretch. Now, so Texas is a very property tax driven state, right? We don't have a state income tax. And so local jurisdictions, including city, county, school districts, et cetera, lean heavily on property tax revenue. And the way that the state laws are written that basically stipulate the rules that you must follow when adopting a tax rate, for the most part, solely focus on the M&O side of the tax rate. They basically, I don't want to say they ignore the INS side of the tax rate, but it's not as much in the forefront. And so in this particular year, you know, if you're seeing this graphic at the very bottom, we very clearly show how we're actually decreasing the amount of money that's going into the debt rate and increasing the amount of money that's going into the M&O side of it. The net effect of that is a decrease in the total tax rate. But the way the state law requires us to write the language and stipulate the motions at council meetings is totally focused on the M&O. So because we will be seeing an increase in revenue on the M&O side, because we're basically taking money from the debt side to the M&O side, we're forced to verbalize it in a way that suggests that we're increasing, because it is increasing on the M&O side. Because again, the rules around how we pursue that is totally based on that. So it can be misleading when you read or someone says, "Hey, I make a motion to increase, you know, the tax rate or whatever by X amount," because it's solely just the M&O side. Once you combine it with the debt rate, then you create the net effect, which is a decrease in the tax rate.
Right.
And for us in particular, and I think this is important, is, you know, we're able to do this in this year in particular because we basically have gotten really good at trying to pay off debt early, right? And like I mentioned at the council meetings, it's no different than us trying to pay down our home or a car loan, right? If you're able to do it sooner, you obviously save money in the long run, right? Because it's less interest. And we've been able to do that. And so that allowed us the ability to basically propose the tax rate that we did. And this, I think, is the 5th year in a row that we propose a decrease in the tax rate.
Right.
It's a lot to the equation.
It is.
Yeah.
And real quick, kudos to our city's finance department and our chief financial officer, Gilbert Reyna, because he helps a lot with that.
AKA the Godfather.
The Godfather.
It does have
I
that
was
vibe.
waiting. Thank you. I was waiting for that.
the
I
vibe.
gave you a little pause.
What was that?
You told me
I'm
to
gonna have
not
to take
hit it as
away
much.
these.
I
I'm gonna
love
have to
it.
take these
What
buttons
was
away from her.
It was the hype button.
It's
I was
called the
giving
hype.
Gilbert some hype.
Why did I
Thank
get
you.
no buttons?
When we introduced you, you
Well,
got the
he
hype.
wants to
I
press
want-
the
Do
button.
you
you
want
want
the
to press
goat
the
button?
button.
Press the-
Before we get started on this one, I think it'd be appropriate to move into the next segment that AJ likes to lead, and it's kind of my favorite. So can we get into that one real quick?
Yeah.
Of course.
Can't use buttons though.
Yeah.
No buttons for this segment, just pure knowledge.
Darn it. It's so tempting.
We got some street talk. All right.
All right.
Word on the streets.
Word on the streets. The segment where we bring you, the listener, into the show. So we're going to go over some comments that we receive on social media, and we're just going to look at them.
You
and
can or you don't have to respond. But we
just-
tend to have some thoughts because typically Sam or I
Did you
or
share these
AJ
with me
see this
before this?
online. No, we didn't.
Okay.
But you
I
know,
was gonna say, I don't
again,
recall
you
seeing
know
anything.
the why behind basically everything. So if you feel free, you want to chime in, feel free. But if not, it's cool.
This is live.
yeah, you're good. All right. So I got the first comment for you, and this comes from a post about Bronson Playground Park.
Okay.
Okay, so this is where it came from. So some of the comments may not always make sense to the post, but it's there.
Okay.
All right.
AJ,
The comment reads,
every resident's comment makes sense.
it does make sense. You're right.
In their mind.
What you mean is sometimes it's out
may
of
not-
context.
yeah, it's out of context.
or
too.
not related to the post itself. So yeah, we'll go ahead and read this one.
We value everybody's feedback.
We really
true.
do.
Sam
Right.
sees them all.
Oh, I already see you put it up on the screen. I already see a word. Are you going to read it?
I am going to read
Oh,
it.
gosh.
All right.
All right.
So here we go. First comment is, y'all making new parks and stuff. We don't need. Let me read that differently.
Okay,
Y'all are
thanks.
making new parks and stuff we don't need.
Okay.
What we really need is these damn roads fixed.
Ooh,
So-
did that hurt you?
What kind of button would that be?
Did that hurt you?
Like a sadness button. People
yeah.
going like, oh.
Oh, I feel that. I
I
understand.
mean, I
though.
drive the same road, so I feel it
Yeah.
at times too.
Yeah, 100%.
I get it. If you drive the same road and it's constant potholes, I get it.
So
You're
what's
upset.
your question?
So
Yeah.
There's
We're
not too much of
reacting.
a question. It's just
Well,
a reaction. So for me, I honestly, I
Can I ask
personally
real
won't
quick?
take away
What post was this on?
the Bronson.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a
Bronson
picture.
Park, yeah.
Okay, that's beautiful. Wow.
So for
Okay.
those who don't know, the city just did a remodel of Brunson Park. I think it's almost done or should be close to being done, where the play structure had not been replaced in 30 years. Obviously, like it deteriorates in that time. There are changes in safety standards and that kind of thing.
Right.
So there was a plan to build a new play structure that has covering on it to keep it shaded for the children, a soft thing under it so when you slide down, you don't hurt yourself. And so that was, and that's obviously like a very small but necessary part of community development. You know,
Right,
you want to have
right.
playgrounds for families to come and to bring their children to play.
Right.
And the total cost of this project was about something like $200,000, which kind of sounds like a lot. But if you think about the amount that we spend on streets every year, then you realize actually that it is a lot more being spent on the roads that this resident was talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where that CIP chart comes into play, I guess, to respond to the bigger picture of the organization.
Yeah.
I'm sure Jesus could talk about this, but if not, I'll just say that there's a lot of moving pieces to operating and ensuring that a community is successful. We were just talking in the last episode about Danielle's efforts to attract and bring in new businesses. That in itself is a big deal. And then you've got, Ken Gill on Public Works maintaining the roads, but that's not it. That's, you drive the roads, but in the morning when you brush your teeth, the water that comes out of the water faucet, that also has its own operations. So there's so much that people just maybe don't have in the forefront of their mind. I will go as far as to say maybe take for granted, right? But at the end of the day, there's so much that really makes a community important. And the priorities are all reflected in the budget. And I think Jesus has said that in the past, right? You put your money essentially where your mouth is. And that's exactly what we've done. If you go back to that chart, whoever is managing the charts, go back to the CIP. I want Jesus to maybe briefly talk about just where we are putting our money towards streets, CIP in general. Residential streets looks like a significant amount. And so do you want to talk about that, Jesus?
Sure. I think, by the way, I agree with the comment that, we definitely need to fix streets, right? That's obviously a very big critical item for us. And we do. And I don't think people realize how much money we actually spend on fixing streets every year, because I don't think people realize how expensive it is to fix streets. As an example, by the time this comes out in errors, I believe we would have already awarded the College Park street reconstruction project, which is literally over $7 million. So literally just redoing the streets, for one neighborhood, over $7 million, right? It's just very, very, very expensive. And so we've been very fortunate, as you can tell by this chart, to have had invested a significant amount of money in streets in the last 4 years compared to what it looked like before then. That's due to a number of things. One, we kind of lucked out, and we came across a period in our budgetary financial situation where we had good debt capacity. And so we wanted to put that towards streets as much as possible. But we also have introduced some new methods on fixing streets, things like mill and overlays, things we weren't really doing in the past, to really extend the number of miles that we're able to fix with similar dollars. And so, for example, between fiscal years 22 and 26, we're trying to address 112 miles of streets in that 5-year period. The previous 5-year window before then, we had only addressed 75. And so we literally have increased the amount of streets in a 5-year period by over 50% that we're addressing, right? Wow. And excuse me, and I think that's significant because we really are driving streets. And I also oftentimes make the comment that, we're creatures of habit, right? We have the same route to school, same route to church, to grocery store, et cetera. We have over 329 miles of streets in Victoria, right? That's from here to Dallas. It's obviously impossible for us to fix all those streets overnight. And not everybody's driving those 329 miles of streets every day, right? And so oftentimes people perceive that we're not spending money on streets or that streets aren't getting fixed if it just doesn't happen to be any of the streets that's in your normal route, right? But the reality is that there's work going on somewhere, right? And so, like I said, we've been fortunate to have had invested a significant amount of money in streets. To address the comment made on Facebook, I think we have to have a balanced approach, right? We all visit communities for a variety of different reasons, none of which is ever streets, right? And so I've oftentimes made the comment that, okay, let's assume that we spend all of the money that we had on just streets, right? Who's going to want to live in a community where you have a bunch of nice streets, but you don't have parks, you don't have quality of life amenities, you don't have a library, you don't have all these other things that really contribute towards your living experience, right?
Right.
And so we have to have a balanced approach. And I think it was Sam or that made the comment about, or maybe you, Ashley, about just the difference, right? Sure, every year we're probably spending about $500,000 in replacing playground equipment. The most expensive playground equipment replacement that's coming is in the next few years when we replace the children's playground in Riverside Park. But $500,000 a year to go towards playground equipment replacements compared to the $27 million that we're spending on streets in fiscal year 25, right? Clearly, we're able to do both.
Right.
We're able to prioritize streets while also trying to tackle some other needs like parks.
Right. And I think that's the understanding most people do have. I think sometimes we may take them literal, but who knows? That person could have just been upset because they were driving down North Street.
Are there any plans to work on leveling and repairing North Streets from Laurent to Ben Wilson? It's a roller coaster ride going down that road.
So,
well,
go ahead.
People don't realize it's part of the strategy.
Yeah.
Having potholes and stuff, really helps slow down traffic. And so it's a speed calming tactic, that's very cost effective for cities.
It's in front of school, right?
To entertain.
Sarcastic comment I've heard Jesus say this whole pod. I was waiting for it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've got a picture of it.
Yeah, it's definitely a big need. We know that, as you all know, fiscal year 25 will begin the design process,
right,
for specifically that stretch actually of North Street. I mentioned earlier the cost. When we went through the preliminary exercise, addressing North Street from basically the 5 Points intersection, literally all the way to 59. If we actually wanted to go all the way over there, it was over $45 million. And so that's not practical, right? I mean, you saw how much money we were spending on streets in fiscal year 25, right? It's basically around 27, about 19 in residential and about 8 in thoroughfares.
That's double the number right there, 45.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be able to really tackle that, right? Yeah. So that's why we have to split it in phases. And council made the very intentional decision to prioritize this stretch, in front of the school.
That's
basically.
perfect. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
It gets used a lot too.
Which happens to be the one with the speed calming the speed calming
all the
setup.
potholes.
I found if you're
a good strategy.
going towards the community center, you just get in the right lane and you take that ride.
And I think more than likely, I think the second phase would probably be the one in front of the community center, simply because of trying to align that improvement with the actual improvements to the community center that we're exploring currently.
That's exciting. More to come on that topic.
Yeah.
But that is the word on the street segment, you guys. I feel like that needs a sound bite. Okay, thank you.
Pun intended, by the
There
way.
you go.
One
Name of
other
that segment.
surprise word on the street I wanted to throw out there is, and we hear about all the new businesses that are in development from Danielle Williams, our economic development director, but we don't obviously want to share all of those because they're still in development. We don't know for sure what the developer is doing in the back end to make sure that all the licenses are good, the permit's good, the building's built, all those things. But one that recently came out and has been public is, I'm going to say it right, HTO. Not like H2O, like the water, but like a T.
Oh, the new, that they're bringing into
they
town.
have
The
26
HCO.
different flavors of brewed tea. Apparently, they have a
that's a Texan thing.
sophisticated way of brewing all of their tea. It's like reverse osmosis system. I read about that. That's pretty crazy. So anyway, I'm learning a lot. And they even sell energy shots. I could use one of those every morning. That'd be great.
You really looked into it.
Yeah,
I did. I'm excited. Can I be honest?
Like
my
the whole
cousin
menu.
frequents this place. And so she was talking about it. And I just had to share.
I've
So,
driven
if
by
you're
a few
excited
of them
about
in
tea,
bigger cities, but I don't
get
think
more
it's
excited.
ever like caught my attention. But maybe I haven't had enough energy in my life or haven't tasted their tea.
If you're a tea drinker, get excited because that one's opening who knows when, but it's coming. It's being built off of Zachlands Parkway, in case you're wondering.
Yeah.
Anyway, Jesus, we've been a part of a few discussions about growing Victoria. And when this airs, it will be following our mayor's State of the City, which we're really excited about.
Yeah.
Can you talk about this effort, kind of its concept and how it, in your mind, and mayor's, of course, would come to fruition and kind of how it started?
Well, I think the idea, the concept of focusing more on growing our community really came out of the budget conversations, right? And what we were mentioning earlier about having limited resources. And the reality is that there's a positive correlation between growth in a city and their finances, right? And it's pretty simple, right? Obviously, the more people that live in a community, that's the more property that is being bought up and the values, and so it generates more property tax revenue. More people living in your community contributes more towards, retail and all these other things that also create and enhance our sales tax revenue side of the house, right? And the reality is that Victoria hasn't grown, right? And so, with the information we shared with council, and I think you even have a graph that you might pull up, clearly shows that our growth is just very minimal in the last 20 years, basically, right? We're roughly at 8%. And when you look at some of the other cities that people typically compare us to simply just because of geography, they've grown over 50%, right? I mean, you look at the cities that have grown more than 50% since 2020, that are somewhat close by, San Marcos, New Braunfels, Sugar Land, Seguin's almost up there. People compare us to those communities quite a bit. We lose personnel to a lot of these communities, but it's just not comparable, right? I'll pick an extreme example to make a point, but Sugar Land has quite a bit of resources. Their general fund is over 120 million. Ours is half that, right? Our taxable values here in Victoria are $6 billion. Sugar Lands are over 21 billion, right? So how much property tax revenue can they generate with 21 billion, right?
That's
compared to our 6 billion, right? And so there's some major differences. They bring in $50 million into their general fund every year from sales tax. We only bring in 19, right? And so now, granted, they're a little bigger, right? They're a little over 100,000 people, but the reality is that there's a positive correlation between growth and finances, right? And if we want to continue to be a community that invests in streets, if we want to try and keep up with the market as best as possible to keep personnel and keep the great folks that want to work here, but sometimes feel the need that they have to leave, right, because of the money, we're going to have to grow. It's not fair for our existing businesses and for our existing residents to bear the cost of what it would cost to keep our operation going and keep our operation competitive. I'm sure they would agree with that, right? They're not going to want we're all taxpayers too, right? We don't want to have to necessarily all bear the burden of an increased property tax rate or something like that. And so the better solution is to focus on growing. And so that was really the birth of this concept of trying to be more intentional with growing Victoria. And basically this initiative that we're embarking on is very simple. It's basically just being more mindful and asking ourselves, with everything that we do, how is this helping Victoria grow? And if it's helping Victoria grow, then it's a passing check mark, right? Mm-hmm. If it's not, then maybe it's not worth it.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, we just need to be more mindful about investing in things that are going to create growth. If you think about how a private business operates, they're no different, right? And so we need to start thinking about growing smarter, almost viewing it as a business. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you a quick example if you have a minute for me to share. Mm-hmm. But one of the concepts that we want to focus more intentionally on is infill, right? Because if you drive around our community, you notice there's a lot of undeveloped property that's already off of Main Street or off of this street or that street, right? And unfortunately, over time, a lot of cities have grown to the outside, right? Through sprawl, right? But that only means more miles of streets, more miles of pipes. So that you're basically making it expensive by extending the infrastructure, right? Versus these undeveloped properties inside the city limits are already next to water lines, sewer lines, already next to streets, right? So if you want to grow smarter, right, you would grow through infill, right, and not increase your liability of maintenance growing to the outside, right? But that can be tricky to accomplish. It's easy rolls off the tongue easy, but it's hard to accomplish. And I oftentimes use the example of like H-E-B because I love H-E-B. Everybody loves H-E-B. But, you know, if H-E-B were to be looking at adding a new product as an example, right, or adding product to their store, they're not going to increase the square footage of the store, right? They're going to look to see, are there empty shelves somewhere, right, first?
Yeah.
Right? They might try and rearrange things inside the store first, right? Because they know that it's too expensive to add square footage to the store, right? And so as cities, we need to be smarter about how can we encourage the redevelopment of areas of our community that could redevelop, because it's just more cost effective for us to redevelop them, just how it'd be more cost effective for H-E-B to just move things around to fill up empty shelves, right? We need to fill up the empty shelves that are inside our city limits because it'd be more cost effective for us. Because again, growing to the outside means now I got to add another fire station, which that's expensive. Now I got to add a bunch of people over there too, right? So we just have to be smarter about it. And so the idea around growing Victoria is trying to basically be better at trying to educate our stakeholders, our community on what I'm just describing, so that we can hopefully garner support for some initiatives that will focus on infill and perhaps be a little bit more aggressive with incentivizing certain types of developments that we think could bring people and create jobs, basically.
Right. I love that.
Because it's not going to happen by magic.
Right. Yeah. That's what
that'd be the third
what I
thing,
was
by
going
the
to say.
way. That, you know, if I had a shirt that had the three
that would be the third.
That'd be the third one.
Nothing happens by magic.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
What?
It doesn't happen by magic. Yeah.
I thought I was going to say he does magic.
Ruined my childhood dreams about Harry Potter's wand. Just saying.
I would be like on America's Got Talent if I could.
If you could do a card trick?
If I could.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome, though. I mean, that even for me, that was new for me to hear. And that's cool, the way you explained it about the city. And I think that opens some eyes and ears, hopefully, about expansion in a way. Like, you don't always think of it as an outwards thing. Maybe it's a different strategy about it, right?
Well,
so
and you alluded to something earlier, too. You were talking about different stakeholders and needing their support and involvement in certain initiatives that the city. So I guess that kind of answers my question, but maybe you can add to it. Is this effort solely on the city's shoulders? Are there others who could be contributing to this conversation in a healthy manner? And if so, how? What do you suggest?
We definitely cannot do it alone. There's a lot of, other players that play a huge role in growing. The school district plays a huge role in a community growing or staying stagnant. It goes without saying that, when you have a family, you obviously look at the school district, right? We know that our school district has challenges.
Sure.
And there's parallels there, right? So for example, they have challenges associated with keeping teachers in compensation, right? But if you think of it, the common denominator between all of these entities is the tax base,
right?
And so they're also competing with communities with much larger tax bases,
right?
And so, but in any case, it'll definitely take other partners as well, Victoria College, UHV, so many working together and collaboratively. And I think what we're trying to achieve with this Growing Victoria campaign is bringing them together in a more intentional manner and aligning ourselves with a shared vision, basically, so that we can all be flowing in the same direction. And some of that is already occurring. By no means do I want anybody interpreting what I'm saying as, we aren't already working on all of these things.
Right.
We have been, and there's been a lot of successes. But I just think that it's getting to the point where we just need to be a tad more aggressive with it, because otherwise we're just going to be left behind.
Sure.
And so we just have to be more aggressive.
Right. And I think everyone's going to understand that. There's a lot of there's opinions out there, I guess. I haven't seen them all, heard them all, but I definitely am excited to see the completion of a lot of projects from our Comp 2035 plan, for starters, and then to kind of see what this conversation looks like going forward, as an organization, as a community. I'm a lifer here, been born and raised, went off to A&M. Whoop, if you're listening.
Lifer.
Came right back.
I was worried that you were going to leave us, but now she can't.
She already said it's on.
I'm a lifer here.
On this podcast.
It's time.
Hey,
It's
where the
lifer.
Lord takes me. No, but seriously, I love this town, love this community. My family's here. We're raising a family here.
Lord, please keep her.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Hey, you too.
Yeah.
Just kidding. But anyway, so there's a lot of good stuff coming. So we'll see. We will see, Victoria. But if you are wondering, you can check out this podcast on Spotify, on YouTube. We do this monthly. That's the biggest debut. We are committing to doing these podcasts monthly. I hope to have the man. I'm sorry, what am I supposed to call you now?
Jesus.
I'm hopeful we can
this
have
is supposed to be a casual
Jesus
setting,
on this
He's
again.
in jeans. Come on.
Come on. I
He's in jeans.
I didn't wear jeans to be
Can't
called
call
a
that
man.
man boss man with jeans
Hey,
on.
I call
come
Daryl
on now.
Lesack, who's in jeans all day, every day. The
Has he
man,
got
the
a
myth,
belt
the
buckle,
legend.
though? Has he got a belt
So the
buckle?
man is
But
actually
he
more
is,
casual.
though. He
Just
is.
saying.
He is.
Anyway,
I just
so
don't want people to, I like showing up casual.
I appreciate that you did.
I'm casual.
Hey,
Casual.
being on this podcast is a big deal that you are treating
Yeah.
casual as a
I mean,
priority.
before this meeting, you all thought I went to the gym in slacks.
Yeah.
So
Wouldn't put it past you. I mean, you could probably.
I got to get my miles in one way.
There
or
you
the
go.
other. That's right.
We're still going to beat you, though. The real winners. Okay, well, thanks so much for joining us. Jesus, thank you. Team, thanks for helping with this podcast.
Thank you,
Listeners, thanks. We couldn't do it without you. Keep on keeping on. Listen to our next episode. And once again, if you want to check this out, we're on Spotify and YouTube. Do share it with your friends and family. We, again, cannot get the word out on our own. We do lean on you to help us do that. And so once again, it's been another episode of Town Talk. We'll talk to you next time. If this is your first time tuning into Town Talk, we hope that you like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Help us get this word out to the community to help us all stay informed, but also to have conversation starters. We hope that it's been fun and enlightening to you. This is new. So again, we can't do it without you. Hope you help us and stay tuned. We'll see you next time.